The meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Carr? Director Garcia has asked to be excused. Director Herndon? Present. Director Jackson?
Present.
Director Leonard?
Present.
Director O'Halloran?
Here.
Director Simpson?
Present.
Director Zambur?
Present.
Chair Gokul Gandhi?
Here.
We have 7 members present.
Great. The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the recitation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Those who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register to speak in advance of the start of the meeting. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. I ask those who are waiting to speak virtually to remain on the platform until you are called upon to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the Chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the Board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the Chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, committee members, or the administration, are to be directed toward the Chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. Please be respectful of the democratic process adhered to by the Board. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone persisting in disrupting this process will be asked to leave or will be escorted from the meeting and not allowed to return. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. No one other than the members of the Board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, or after meetings of the Board and its committees. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meeting's agendas and minutes page on the MPS website and choosing online agendas. Now, let's begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item 1 is an informational overview and public hearing on the 2023-24 Superintendent's proposed budget. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the administration please present the item?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. I'm delighted to present to you the Milwaukee Public Schools proposed budget for the 2023-24 school year. A budget reflects the priorities of an organization. Evident in the budget is the importance that we place on schools, students, and staff. 94% of the school's operating funds is allocated to support schools to provide the resources needed to educate students from 3 years old through 12th grade. Schools per pupil funding was increased by an average of $1,000 per pupil. Schools Title I fundings was increased by $160 per pupil. Schools can use the increased funding to budget to meet the school needs. We value our staff. We proposed an 8% cost of living increase for all staff to help salaries keep up with the rising cost. To keep this increase from negatively impacting schools' budgets, $27 million in funding was provided to offset the cost of raises to school budgets. Martha Kreisman, Shelley Perkins, as well as Nick Simron are here with me, and we will present the budget overview tonight. Martha?
Hello, Director or Chair Golkangandi, and members of the committee. Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer, and I'm ready to start the PowerPoint to talk about the 5 priorities for success. The budget we are presenting tonight is aligned to the 5 priorities for success, prioritizing fiscal resources in schools and focusing on the 5 priorities reflects the district's commitment to the educational success of every child. We use this opportunity tonight to ensure transparency, communication, and collaboration. The topics to be discussed tonight include selected district highlights from the current year, the budget development process, and an overview of the district's funding and long-range opportunities. The district remains committed to the Milwaukee Board of School Districts goals focused on academic achievement, student, family, and community engagement, and effective and efficient operations. Before we go forward with the proposed budget, we want to first acknowledge the current year's accomplishments. Dr. Posley will provide us with MPS highlights of the current year that will help frame our discussion going into the next year.
In Milwaukee Public Schools, we are privileged to serve over 68,000 students with racial, culturally, linguistically, and economically disadvantaged. Students have a choice of among 156 public schools that include 21 bilingual schools, 27 schools offering ESL to students from around the world, 4 language immersions, 8 IB schools, and 8 Montessori schools. We are also happy to say that we are the home of 5 of the state's top high schools, according to U.S. News and World Reports. Milwaukee Public Schools prepare students for higher education. The class of 2022 received over $107 million in scholarships, helping to pave the way for their post-secondary success. We're pleased with the numerous ways of the MPS team has supported student achievement this year. You noticed a few are listed on the slides. I will emphasize some. An ambitious instruction, accelerated learning plan continues to emphasize reading, writing, and problem solving across the curriculum while using formative practice, explicit instruction, and engaging students. We meet with school teams during the budget process to get an update on their progress in reading and mathematics, amongst other topics. These meetings are called Ambitious Instruction Budget Conversations. It was great to hear from the school staff to discuss how they have adjusting their instructions based on formative data to support children's academic success. The consistency focused on ambitious instruction is having an impact at the school level. An example of ambitious instruction across the curriculum is staff using new standard-aligned curriculum resources in social studies and engaging students in reading and writing through primary documents and document-based questioning. During the year, the counting collection routine was launched for our youngest learners, building a foundation for future problem-solving success. Due to the referendum funding and the increase in art, music, physical education, and library and media specialists at schools, I'm excited to tell you that more than 500 students performed in the Wisconsin School Music Association Solo Ensemble Contest. The Seal of Biliteracy was given out in the 2019-20 school year, with 19 students awarded, and I am proud to say that we are projecting over 100-plus students to graduate with the Seal of Biliteracy. Students at times need additional support to be academically successful. Milwaukee Public Schools has expanded the school community partnership for mental health from 24 to 39 schools. That means there are on-site mental health staff to provide therapy to students in need. Tutoring is being provided for additional academic instruction and support. Last spring budget session, it was discussed and added, we had certified nursing assistant labs in high schools. 4 labs have been created and college classes have been offered. MPS is working to engage students during the school day and also within after-school clubs. There are clubs for gardening, cooking, and athletics. Even state champions were produced by one club. There is also a chess club at Milwaukee German Immersion School, and the school has won state championships twice. One 5th grader is a 2-time state champion, and 2 other 5th graders took home individual awards. There are now 17 esports labs in MPS. Sports labs are another way of attracting and engaging high schoolers. MPS Department of Recreation and Community Services provides scholarships to youth to make sure all youth can participate in recreation services. Recreations offers high-quality activities for all age groups. Tonight, you will hear about the categorical funding. The district continues to seek additional funds to provide supplemental support for our students. Year to date, we have received 51 grants totaling almost $30 million. All of the highlights I have mentioned are carried out by the district and school teams and staff that work hard every single day to serve the students that we are entrusted in our care. This was only a small section of the countless initiatives and projects that were started and carried out throughout the current year. We look forward to upholding the same commitment next year under the proposed budget that is currently before you. Nick?
Good evening, Chair Gandhi, board members, directors. Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning and Budget Services. First, would like to discuss the importance of the budget and the intended purpose of the budget. Budgets are really more than just a listing of funding allocations and priorities. Excuse me. They also provide or create a collaborative development process to help flesh out the district's goals. They present the district's financial plan for the public, serve as a communication document, guides the management staff to aid in the control of financial resources, provides highlights of financial policies as directed by you as directors, fosters transparency of fiscal information for the public, and informs long-term planning so that the district can be on a sound financial footing not only this year but into the future. The next slide is an overview of the budget development timetable. And really, the budget process is a year-round collaborative process amongst schools and departments and our team and the budget staff. Discussions start right away in December, where we highlight the largest expenses categories. Typically, that is for any organization, salaries and supplies. Throughout December and into April, we review current programs, funding, levels, and the school allocations. So those are discussions with the regional schools and take into account their specific individual school needs. We hold strategic planning and budget committee meetings for discussion and possible action on the proposed potential parameters and timetables. Those are parameters and timetables as set by U.S. board members. We'll discuss the budget process and preliminary allocations that typically begins in April. Hold school ambitious instruction budget conversations as I previously mentioned by the superintendent, this has a real focus and emphasis on English language arts and literacy, as well as mathematical literacy. And then prepare with input for school engagement councils for the proposed school budget starting in April as well, to really hear community input on their individual school budgets. The next slide highlights February through April. So beginning in April, we hold school budget resolution debriefing meetings. That's with individual schools to really assess their individual needs. This is from February to April. Prepare proposed office budgets, hold office budget conversations with key stakeholders, including local individual school staff, parents, engagement councils. Compile the superintendent's proposed budget, which we are presenting here to you today, and then release MPS superintendent's proposed budget for public review and question and hearing. Starting in May through June, we'll hold public hearings on the proposed budget. I believe that's on May 16th for the viewing public. Publish statutory public hearing notice. Hold the statutory hearing on proposed budget. And I apologize, that's on May 16th. Board members submit and take possible action on amendments to the proposed budget. Then we'll hold board meetings for possible action and transmit the adopted budget to the Milwaukee Common Council. Here on the next slide, you will see the parameters that we use to refine the superintendent's proposed budget. These are parameters set by the school board. First, to allocate equitable educational resources and well-prepared staff to improve students to access to productive instruction. Reallocate resources to improve academic achievement by providing small group instruction in the areas of literacy and English language, and also mathematical literacy. Prioritize school budgets by adjusting and repurposing educational programming and departmental budgets. Allocate resources in the areas of school library, art, music, and physical education, and create a positive school environment that provides a sense of belonging, culturally responsive, and provides access to social emotional learning and mental health support for our students. And then implement strategies to recruit and retain staff, including addressing the results of the compensation study. Further, going into the parameters set by the board, implement a salary schedule with a potential cost of living increase to better retain and incentivize our staff. Consider employee benefit modifications for eligible employees to identify cost saving and increased efficiencies. Explore operating efficiencies, including those related to payroll, professional development, the hiring process, and temporary housing for international teachers. Increase the number of site-based production kitchens to better nourish and feed our students. Implement a kitchen equipment replacement schedule based on an inventory aging report. Address deferred maintenance and future construction needs by restoring revenue to the construction fund and the construction trust. And then finally, prepare a balanced budget that is based on state law and maximizes the revenue limit. And here on this slide, you will see a visual representation of a breakdown of the different pots or categories of the district's funding. On the far left, you'll see the fiduciary funds. And these funds are long-term investments that are really intended to not provide like immediate resources for this annual budget, but to provide long-term sustainable funds to support things like our pensions, our other employee benefits or post-retirement benefits, and the long-term capital investment trust. The next category from the left is school operating funds, and that includes the vast majority of the district's funding. Then you'll see the statutory funds. These are extension and construction, as well as the school operating fund. This falls into that category. These funds are set out and outlined in state statute. So in addition to the school operating funds, the other statutory funds are the extension and the construction fund. And then finally, we have non-statutory funds or categorical funding. And And these are funding that are largely provided or are in fact entirely provided by grants, largely from the federal government. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Martha Kreitzman.
Chair Gandhi, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. This slide is depicting the revenue limit, and it's kind of a simplistic way to look at it, but the revenue limit is a set amount, so the number 7 was used just to show that amount as an example. So the revenue limit, as you see in each example, stays the number 7. We can't go above the revenue limit, but the revenue limit is made up of state aid and tax levy. So as one is higher, the other one is lower. So state aid, if in the example, if it's $1, tax levy would be $6. And then if you go to the bottom, when state aid is 6, then tax levy is 1. It always equals 7 if that's our revenue limit. So sometimes people hear state aid is going up and they think we're going to get more money from Milwaukee Public Schools, but we don't get more money. We get more money if the revenue limit goes up. This increased state aid does help the taxpayers in Milwaukee, though, the property taxpayers. And this is a history of our per pupil revenue limit. We get our revenue limit on a per member basis, and this slide shows from 2004-05 on to the current, or to the next year's funding. The chart shows that there were increases in the revenue limit from 2004-05 to 2010-11, and the little orange bars show what those increases were. So when the law came in as for revenue limits, it included an inflationary increase. And that inflationary increase in those years was always in the $200 category, like $200 up to $275. But then when Act 10 came into place, we actually lost money for the district, $556 per pupil. And we went from $10,013 per pupil in 2010-11 to $9,548 in 2011-12. And then after that, there was no longer in law that we had to get a cost of living increase or an inflationary increase. So right after Act 10, there was little increases, $50, $75 for the next 3 years. And then after that, $0. We were at $10,122 per pupil from 2015-16 to 2018-19. When Governor Evers came into office, there was an increase of about $175 per pupil for the next 2 years. Then after that, no increase again. We don't know what next year holds because we don't know the state budget yet. But right now, if we did not have the referendum, our per pupil would be $10,476 compared to 2010-11 at $10,013. And it's no wonder costs are exceeding the revenues in Milwaukee Public Schools. The School Operations Fund, I'm going to be talking about that. And this is the revenue sources for the School Operation Fund. The slide shows that 82% of our School Operations Fund is from the revenue limit, and that's why that revenue limit is so important to Milwaukee Public Schools. We are predicting for the proposed budget that our revenue limit would be which includes state aid and tax levy, $848 million, and that's down about $32 million from the current year. Our total School Operations Fund will be $1,036 million estimated for fiscal year '24, and that's down $10.4 million. We are predicting an increase in state special education aid, and part of that is due to the amount we have budgeted for special education. We have $204 million budgeted for special education, and in the current year, I think it's about $184 million compared to $204 million for next year. And the current year, we are expecting actual reimbursement for special education to be $59 million. So it's really an actual increase of about $3 million instead of 6.5, but we always compare it to the fall adopted budget. Oops. Then expenditures for school operations. Most of our expenditures come from salaries because we are a service organization. In fact, if you take those first three lines, salaries, other wages, and benefits, it amounts to $706 million of the $1,036 million in school operations fund. Another large category is purchase services of $246 million predicted for fiscal year '24. Out of that, contracted schools are about $80 million, transportation, $67 million, and then there's other purchase services. Here's a slide that is showing what Dr. Posley talked about, 94% in schools. So starting in fiscal year 19, there was 88% of the school operations fund went to schools. And now we're up to 94% in fiscal year 23, and we're maintaining that amount for fiscal year 24. Another way to look at how do we spend our funding is to look at the central services compared to schools. And on this slide, if you can glance down the slide, you'll find the area where it says schools and school accounts. These are all funding that are directly in our schools, and for fiscal year 24, the amount is $974 million, and that's out of our $1,036 million. So you can see it's most of that funding. The rest of the funding is for central services, which also supports our schools. Another way to look at it is through a pie graph. So this is the $974 million that's going to schools, and what's left out of that $1,036 million is about $62 million in funding. And what do we use this funding for? $355.8 million is actual school budgets where they control the funding, and then the other school accounts are direct services in the schools. $204 million for special education, $32 million in art, music, physical education, and library media, $27.4 million for school staff salary increases, $42.9 million for open enrollment, $56 million for school office staff, $67.3 million in transportation, $35.8 million building operations, $9.4 million for world languages, and $5.3 million supplemental school support. Now, this isn't all of the costs, but these are some of the major drivers. And then to talk about the $62 million that's left, there's $304 million in benefits, and you might wonder, how does that come out of $62 million? Well, it's because we charge a benefit rate to all the salaries across all the budgets, so that kind of feeds into paying for that. But that's how much benefits cost. $79.6 million across central services, $29.7 million in debt services, and $26 million in utilities, to talk about the remainder. Then we have our referendum funding that was approved in the spring of 2020. And that funding was a phase-in model to bring us to $87 million. And as you can see on the slide for fiscal year 24, we are at that $87 million point. And for fiscal year 24, that's an additional $3 million, because in fiscal year 23, we were up to $84 million. So because, and thanks to the public, we are able to provide services in the 6 areas listed on the slide: early childhood class size reduction, attracting and retaining certified educators, professional support staff, library, art, music, physical education, advanced academics, career and technical education. It looks like on the slide we're reducing attracting and retaining certified educators, but the 10 million is mostly part of the district's OPEB obligation for early retirement that was put in place in fiscal year 21. The OPEB payment was removed due to early payments. Our yearly obligation has lowered by that amount. What does the referendum specifically do for us? We are providing a total of 98.46 class size reduction teacher FTEs to serve K-3 through 3rd grade classrooms, including Head Start classrooms. Some of these are positions moved from a grant funding source that could no longer support them, and others are new positions. Human resources staff have participated in 75 recruitment events, and we've reduced student to staff ratios for mental health supports. Some other highlights include funding additional certified visual arts teacher, adding 56 music programs, quality instruments, a district music library, and school staff salary increases. And now Nick Sinram will talk to you about Nutrition Services Fund.
Chair Gokugandhi, committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning and Budget Services, excuse me. The slide you see here breaks down the funding for the nutrition fund. It's a statutory fund created by the state. Here you'll see that the vast majority of our funding comes from the federal government. These reimburse the district for lunches and other meals provided to our students. Federal funding is approximately $49.4 million, and as well as we receive some additional state aid. On the next slide, you will see a breakdown of expenditures from the nutritional fund by category. Our largest category, by category, the largest category expenditure is salaries, and that's typical of any organization or service provided. And the second being food and supplies. And this comes out to a total expenditure of approximately $57.7 million, which is a pretty significant increase from this previous year, and it's a $9.8 million increase. Here you see some more detail on the use of funds from the nutritional fund. The largest expenditure type for the district makes is for school lunches at approximately $42 million, and that is definitely the lion's share of the nutritional fund expenditures. We also provide a pretty significant school breakfast program. On the next slide, you'll see a breakdown of revenues for the construction fund. Largely funded by property tax levy. The total is $7.1 million for this year, for next year. The next slide shows construction fund expenditures by category. The most, and in fact, the entirety of the fund is spent through purchase services or contracted services. Here's some more detail on this slide of the subtypes. So we have vehicle replacement, major maintenance, and major remodeling, as well as regional development. Vehicle replacement is intended to help ensure that the district's fleet stays up to date and running efficiently. And then major maintenance is our largest category to make sure that our buildings are operating efficiently. And there's always a significant, as you know, need in the construction fund, often more than what we have funding for. At that, I'll turn the presentation back over to Martha Kreitzman.
Thank you, Nick. Chair Gokugandhi, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Most of the revenues, almost $35 million, come from the tax levy for the extension fund. The extension fund is not under the revenue limit. There is also a planned use of applied surplus of $5.8 million in the extension fund. The expenditures for the extension fund are mostly purchased services. Some of the contracted services are for playfield updates. They also spend over $20 million on salaries, other wages, and benefits. Total expenditures are $43 million. Extension funds are used for recreation programs, including youth sports, enrichment classes, aquatics, and other programs. These programs serve the city of Milwaukee and beyond and serve all age groups. There is funding for playfield renovations and for planning a Northside Community Center construction project. Community learning centers are also supported through this funding. Extension Fund provides twilight centers, late-night leagues, and community wellness programs. It maintains the playfields and field houses. $2 million is paid to use MPS buildings. The successful Partnership for the Arts and Humanities grant program and the music festival are all made possible through the Extension Fund. Categorical revenues are our district grant funding. It is projected to decrease by $357 million, bringing the total to $352 million. And the decrease is due to expending the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, also called ESSER. Other major grants include Title I, IDEA for special education services, and Head Start, to name a few. Shelley Perkins will tell us more about ESSER funding.
Chair Gogo Gandhi, members of the committee, my name is Shelley Perkins, Director of State and Federal Programs. Prior to discussing this slide, I want to take this opportunity to update the board on progress since our last report in October of 2022. The spring 2023 budget revision detail, which is attachment 6, reflects actual expenditures and commitments from grant inception through February 28, 2023. The format of the spring 2023 budget revision detail is a combination of both ESSER 2 and 3 budget summary books for a more streamlined review of the ESSER 2 and 3 allocations under each funding priority committee: accelerating learning, health and wellness, facilities, technology, and extracurricular engagement. This book is formatted by each committee detailing the accomplishments through February 2023, current and planned activities, budget revisions, and priority line item details. In order to enhance the readability of the report, the line items falling into a single category have been consolidated to best reflect the administration's activity related to the same cost objectives and to reflect implementation needs. With the proposed revisions, the district demonstrates our unwavering commitment to closing the achievement gap and exceeds the required 20% reservation of ESSER 3 funds to support mitigating learning loss, indicated by the gold highlighted numbers shown in the ESSER 3 priority detail. On this slide, this chart shows the spring 2023 ESSER 2 budget summary. As a reminder, just under $225 million was allocated to Milwaukee Public Schools under ESSER 2. Nearly $177 million, 79% of the award, has been obligated as of February 28, 2023, and the committee report will further detail accomplishments related to the obligation as well as current and future plans for the remaining balance. Accelerating Learning had nearly $35 million in expenditures, reflecting major efforts for direct services to students, providing students with approximately 9,600 hours of additional academic instruction and support, investments in staff development, and procurement of high-quality materials. The Accelerating Learning Committee report starting on page 4, highlights over 103 lines of effort prioritized for action. The Health and Wellness Committee report starts on page 13, with additional detail on priority progress in focus areas such as COVID-19, risk mitigation measures, and social-emotional learning programming. Health and Wellness had nearly $7 million in expenditures, providing therapy to over 900 students. The Facilities Committee report begins on page 20 with a snapshot of progress status at February 28th, with over $28 million spent in ESSER 2. The majority of ESSER 2 projects are related to air quality, with nearly 128 outdoor classrooms to be completed by the end of the summer 2023. 25% are nearing completion, awaiting spring weather for installation of plants and other features. On the next slide, you may recall from our previous presentation that many of the line efforts under Accelerating Learning, Health and Wellness, and Facilities were able to continue with the third stimulus package under ESSER 3. As a reminder, 2 additional priority areas, technology and extracurricular engagement, were added when developing the ESSER 3 plan. 79% of the technology allocation have been obligated, with nearly $41 million spent, putting over 92,000 Chromebooks and accessories in the hands of our students. The Extracurricular Engagement Committee report begins on page 27, with just over $53 million obligated, providing 822 free sport physicals to students, engaging 3,578 students in after-school clubs during the FY23 school year, and providing free driver's education to over 2,000 MPS students. Unrealized salary and wage expenditures for planned programmatic activity already approved and underway will be supported by the remaining balance. Excuse me. Next slide. The online version of the Spring 2023 ESSER 2 and 3 proposed budget revision detail is posted on the district's ESSER webpage at the address listed below. For more information about the budget revision detail, please contact MPS Office of Finance at 414-475-8851 or via email at esser@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Thank you.
Madam Chair Gulkan Gandhi, and members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. I want to talk to you about the all funds revenue. This is combining all the funds we talked about prior, and our total for all funds comes to approximately $1,500,000,000. And it shows the school operations, nutrition, extension, construction, and categorical funds that we've talked about previously. This is a decrease of the $372 million, but that's mostly due to the categorical that we talked about due to the spending of ESSER funds. And all funds are used. 19.1 million is showing a commitment to our classroom by increasing school funding. We were able to increase the per pupil for schools in our general fund and also in our Title I funding. Continuing work with ambitious instruction framework, programming diverse core and extracurricular offerings, retaining school support teachers and redefining their focus on mathematics and language arts, providing mental health supportive services, increasing funding to the construction fund, attracting and retaining staff through employee salary schedules and cost of living increases, increasing funding for library, media, music, art, and physical education in schools, and providing student-friendly, nutritious meals that meet USDA requirements as we work with our task force. Then we have statutory funds. As Nick told us earlier, our statutory funds include our school operations fund, construction fund, and our extension fund. In the statutory funds, the school operation funds includes our nutrition funds. And this is a 5-year projection, and you can see that fiscal year 23 that we're in currently, at the bottom comes to 0 because we have a balanced budget between revenues and expenditures. The top of the chart shows the revenues and the bottom the expenditures by cost categories of salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, etc. And then when we get to 23-24, we're balanced again. But as we go into the future years, you can see that our balances get negative as costs keep rising and our revenues are not keeping up with those costs. Now, it's hard to predict the future, but I think we have to realize that we're not going to have ESSER funds going forward, and we have to really consider during fiscal year 24, how are we going to handle that? Part of our balancing the budget this year was to move some funding from our school operations into ESSER, and we have really tried to avoid that, but to balance the budget, we did do that, and we put some of our, about 13 million of our art, music, and FIED into the ESSER funds. That'll be fine for fiscal year 24, but we really have to think about fiscal year 25 and how can we get those positions back into the regular budget. Then our long-range impacts. State funding is a big impact for Milwaukee Public Schools, so we are really hoping for what's going to come out of the state budget. And then inflation, we had high inflation lately. I think things are settling down somewhat, but that's really causing another impact with revenues not going up and inflation going up. It's just like our home budgets, it hurts. So supply chain issues that we've been experiencing, bids coming in higher than we thought when we planned our ESSER funding, staffing vacancy issues, ESSER funds I mentioned going away, and then we have cost-saving opportunities that we really need to study during the year as to how we can, what we will do for fiscal year 25.
I would like to express my appreciation to the Milwaukee Board of School Directors for support during this process, as well as all of the district employees and stakeholders for their contributions. The district's unwavering dedication to give pupils the finest education possible is reflected in how financial resources are prioritized in the schools. Collaboration and public involvement are opportunities to provide for the annual budget process. As we collaborate to provide an opportunity for our children, we are eagerly waiting the input and debate from the board and the community regarding the proposed budget, and we look forward to supporting in every way we possibly can. Thank you, and that concludes our portion of the budget tonight.
Madam Chair, I would ask that if my colleagues are okay with it, we would take public testimony before we opened the floor for questions. Is everyone okay with that?
Madam, or Chair Gokul Gandhi, would you yield for a question regarding public testimony?
Sure, go ahead.
I understand that there's some people in the audience who were turned away because they did not turn in a speaker slip before the start of the meeting. Is there a new board policy that I'm not aware of?
Madam Secretary, could you clarify for us?
Madam Chair, during discussions, and this is actually something that is new but not new to this meeting, It is new to the board's process after coming back from the pandemic. In order to be fair to those individuals who are required to register to speak in advance online, there had been discussion about what that process would look like for those individuals in person. For the last at least 6 months, we have been noticing publicly for individuals who wish to speak at the meetings that they would need to register to speak before the start of the meeting. And that would include both of our in-person audience as well as our online audience. So given that the online, those individuals testifying virtually were required to follow the public notice, that has been the same rule enforced for those in person. And that is not something new to this board's process ever since coming back from the pandemic.
Director Zomber, do you have any follow-up?
Chair Gokul Gandhi, I move that the board allow people who turned in a speaker slip after 5:30 be allowed to speak tonight and share their comments about the budget.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Madam Secretary?
So-
Hold on one second, sorry.
Yep.
Yes, Director O'Halloran.
Can we maybe just do it for tonight and then just going forward? Is that the proposal? Or is that, am I understanding it correctly?
Director Zambor, would you like to clarify?
The motion is just for tonight, but we should revisit the policy, absolutely.
Okay.
Madam
Secretary?
Chair, I understand that there was a motion made, but the board was not publicly noticed that you would be taking action on that tonight. This has been something that has been publicly noticed for all of our meetings. And so individuals who were not able to make it here to be able to register before the meeting would not have the same opportunity as those who came after the start of the meeting and registered to speak. And so if this is something that we can add to an agenda for the board to discuss publicly and take action on, we can certainly do that. But the board has not publicly noticed that you would be taking action on your public speaking process tonight.
Director Zambor, any follow-up? Or any other questions?
I mean, I am shocked that we would have a meeting and not let people testify because they arrived at 5:31. And I think that's a misinterpretation of the intent.
Madam Secretary?
Madam Chair, members of the board, it is certainly up to the chair and the board's leadership to make changes to its process at any given time. If I am interpreting the board's request to have fairness in its speaking process, I am certainly open to the board taking action and waiving that process and allowing a specific action to take course tonight.
Director Zambor, would you like to redo your motion to waive the specific rule for tonight and then invite a review of the process at a later meeting?
Yes, Chair Gokul Gandhi, could the office, or could the,
Office of Madam Secretary?
Yes.
could Dr. Mann
Yes.
let me know what policy it is I'm referring to?
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is not policy. And as I stated in this process, that this has been the board's process. In thinking about public discussion and understanding that the board doesn't have the ability to have a completely hybrid meeting, there had been an update provided to the board on the process being able to allow individuals to testify virtually and in person. During those conversations with the board about the process, it was determined that the board would, given that the individuals online would have to register to speak and allow us to, our technology team to get them online registered and a link to be allowed into the meeting by 3 p.m., those same rules were applied to those individuals speaking in person. So again, if the board is looking to change that, that would be something that we can certainly notice that for the public to provide public testimony on and for the board to take action on.
Director Zambor?
Chair Gokul Gandhi, I move that that rule be suspended and that people who turned in their speaker slip after 5:30 be allowed to testify.
Madam Secretary? Or I guess I need a second. Director Leonard? Madam Secretary?
Madam Chair, this again is, as the chair of the meeting, you can certainly do that. This is not a regular board meeting, and so any changes to your rules would need to go through committee and come to the board. However, the chair could allow the policy, or the, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say policy because it is not a written policy. It has been the board's practice ever since we've come back from the pandemic. And so if that is the will of the board and there is no objection to that, you could move forward in allowing that tonight.
Okay, can you clarify one more time what my intent is to allow public testimony. I think if someone has come to the meeting and taken the time to involve themselves in their citizenship, then they should be able to testify, but I am not clear. So if I'm not clear, I can't imagine the listening public is not clear. So can you please explicitly state what the rules are to testify in person and online?
Madam Chair, as publicly noticed for each one of our regular board meetings, the public testimony component reads as follows. Public testimony will be taken in person and virtually during the meeting. Those who wish to speak must register in advance. The deadline to register for access to the virtual speaker platform is 3 p.m. on Thursday, May 4th, 2023. Registration may be completed by phone or email. In-person public testimony will be taken from those who register in advance by filling out a speaker slip and submitting it to the board clerk before the start of the meeting. Speaker slips will not be accepted once the meeting has started. Written testimony may be submitted to the Milwaukee Board of School Directors through the Office of Board Governance. Written comments received by 3 p.m. on Thursday, May 4th, 2023, will be forwarded to the board for its consideration.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, but I think there are some more questions. So I'm going to open it up again. Director Zambor.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, so what I'm understanding is that this is what's noticed in the agenda, but it's not a board policy, and I'd like to call the question.
Okay, on the question of allowing testimony for those who showed up later than outlined in the public notice for this meeting, Madam Secretary.
Madam Chair, I again have to.
Oh, we don't, okay.
Alert the committee that you are not.
Okay.
Publicly noticed to speak about this tonight. I mean, you can certainly make a rule to change public testimony tonight as a body. And so, given that this is a committee meeting, you would not need a second on any motion. So I'm understanding that Director Zambor would like the chair to consider giving public testimony to individuals who registered after the required deadline. So on that motion, as read,
Go ahead. Please call
Director
the roll.
Carr.
Aye.
Director Herndon. Aye. Director Jackson.
No.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zambor.
Aye.
Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
That's 7 ayes, 1 no. The motion passes.
Okay. Madam Secretary, do we have public testimony on this item?
Madam Chair, we do have both virtual and in-person testimony on this item. And so we will go to the virtual platform to allow the testimony first. And The first individual on the platform is Angela Lucas Foley. We will switch our component over to virtual, and then we will hear from Angela Lucas Foley. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony. Angela Lucas Foley. Okay, we will go to the next speaker, which is Ray Chappelle. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Ray Chappelle, MPS educator, representative, aspiring anti-racist white educators, Milwaukee, CHAPPELLE. Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, it has been said by wise people before me that budgets are moral documents. To the members of RWE, and more broadly to the members of the Equity Coalition, equity is our guiding light and our binding value. As you make adjustments to this budget, those of us in RWE urge you to wonder, where is the commitment to equity in the superintendent's proposed budget? In what ways does this budget ensure that every student, every educator, and every school are equipped with the unique tools that they need in order to succeed? How much money is allocated to furthering the development of anti-racism in our mostly white teaching staff? If funds have been set aside for this purpose, are those opportunities for anti-racist growth ongoing? Are they mandatory? The anti-racism resolution that some of you helped pass in July 2019 states that anti-racist, anti-bias, and restorative practices trainings are imperative for all current staff and students. Furthermore, it was written that these trainings must be integrated throughout all schools in our district and should be ongoing beyond the first 5 years of the resolution passing. This endeavor could be paid for through a number of different initiatives like equity, access, and inclusion, or the response to intervention and PPIS initiatives. Those are on pages 3A8 and 3A10. To boot, members of the Equity Coalition are requesting increased base pay for teacher vacancies that have been unfilled for more than one semester. Earlier tonight, Dr. Posley bragged that MPS is home to some of the best high schools in the country. I graduated from one of those schools 10 years ago now. And while I'll always be a proud alumni of Rufus King, I'd be lying if I said that it would ever be permissible to have a virtual teacher teaching core classes at King. So why is that the reality of students at schools like Obama, SCTE, or Audubon Middle School? How are we incentivizing quality veteran educators to apply for these hard-to-fill positions? So I'll end my testimony by asking you, what are the morals and values of the director sitting here today? More specifically, is equity a value that you hold near and dear to your heart? Did you claim to care about equity while campaigning? Words are one thing. We need you to act now.
Madam Chair, that completes the virtual testimony. Technology has confirmed that is the only individual on the platform to speak.
Okay, great. We will move to in-person testimony. We will start with Christina Williams. Yes. Yes, there is a time limit. It's right there, yes. No worries. Please state your name and spell your last name.
Pardon me, my name is Christina Williams. My last name is spelled W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S.
Thank you.
I just put a chip in my mouth, I'm so sorry. Okay, I have notes. So I'm a 41-year-old daughter of two Marines. Both my parents were Marines. And I live my life on a different frequency. I'm not from here, and I am a former MPS employee. The reason I'm a former MPS employee is because, well, when I turned 41, I wanted to retire. And I had another job. Well, it was a sales job. The sales job paid more in commission, period. But the thing about it is, My degree is in the law. I have a paralegal degree, but I'm an Esquire. I speak 7 languages. I am a globe checker. I know a lot of stuff about a lot of things. I've proposed chess club.
Ms. Williams, do you have comments on the budget?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
My comment on the budget is, okay, so it starts with DPI, right? Department of Public Instruction, Madison. Most of the fiduciary funds go towards, from what it's more apparent in the sports. In the sports, but the arts is where it's at. But it's all art. It's all arts, because some of the best ballet, I'm confused. You saw? Oh, okay. Okay, so, you know what? I'm just going to share this. Frustration and motivation. Okay, so you formulated an opinion on what and how things should be. Maybe your path crosses with someone on the plane, and you greet and you confide and you speak candidly because you believe you can trust. What's the harm, right? But then comes turbulence.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
The comments have to be on the budget?
It
so-
is on the budget.
Okay.
This is just, it's more eloquently written, because I'm kind of nervous. This is really formal, and.
Sure.
So, you begin to show signs that fear is near, but then there's an announcement and you hear because you've been rendered speechless. Attention passengers, please return your seats to its upright position. Instinct tells you to become more aware and to pay attention because you're not the one who's flying the plane. 4 seconds left. You guys are doing awesome. I've worked at like 50 different MPs.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Thank you. Next, we have Beverly Hamilton Williams.
Excuse me. Beverly Williams, Williams. MPS has 40,000 students, 50% of students who are considered truant. Your budget says 18,000 black males, 3,565 suspended, although that data on page 4921 does not match the monthly reports. 2 years ago, MPS eliminated MPD resource officers in schools and the TAB officers on the streets, saving $874,000 with promises of using these funds for mental health and social emotional learning. It never happened, even with funds assigned in MPS budgets. This is one of many reasons some teens are causing chaos during school hours in the community, such as the car versus the bus incident on May 1st by Morris Middle School. We need boots to the ground, keeping these students in school and not an NPS truancy program with NPS employees sitting behind their desk. As I stated to you, your numbers in your book on page 4921, write that down, is incorrect. There needs to be an investigation. Possibly the data has been skewed or something because it doesn't match your monthly reports. I'm also mystified at this $14 million that you put in this budget, every single budget, about getting art, music, and fire ed teachers, and you still don't have them. Then you have money left over because you have vacancies, but you still put the $14 million down there. What is happening to those funds? Where's the money? You all need to investigate that. But definitely investigate the numbers on page 4921 that are skewed and incorrect about the black males and the suspensions. It's higher than that. And that's something you all need to work on. Also, as one of the achievements, I didn't see anything about truancy up there. Considering all the problems we have in our city with African-American young males, there was nothing in there about achievement. Also, I don't see anything in the budget about addressing truancy. Thank you.
Next, we have Yolanda Williams.
First time here, hi. Second time, hi. That's how you, okay. Yolanda Williams, last name Williams, Williams. I'm kind of nervous. I am a grandmother, and this is going to get straight to the budget. I'm a very active parent in all schools. It must feel good to spit out numbers because nobody don't understand them, including me. And I have 3 degrees. The budget that you guys are spurring and somewhere making yourself believe that it is making a difference for our community, for our kids, is shameful. You're putting out numbers for kids that's not even in position. You say 68,000 kids? It shows us 40,000 kids truancy. Who are you feeding? Who are you feeding? We need to. I am not even a product of Milwaukee Public School, but I have 4 kids that went to private schools. But right now, it's a shame that you guys can allow to sit on that board and think that you are benefiting our children. They out there killing. They don't have things in place. You keep on talking about things you have in place for them. That is a lie. I am a very active parent in all schools. There's no programs in place. There's no music, no drama. Why do it make y'all feel good to spurse out those numbers when they're not happening? It's not true. And I am fed up. But now that my kids is out of school, yeah, they went to private school because MPS wasn't for them. But I'm ready now. You guys gonna have to answer to these parents and these kids.
Ma'am, do you have comments about the budget?
Quit lying about the budget. Put the money where it needs to be. Get a feasible plan so it can make all of the kids come together. Make a feasible plan and make sure that is true.
Our next speaker is Quentin Clabon.
Hey everyone, thanks for your hard work. I'm Quentin Clabon, Klabon. 6 things. Unrealistic enrollment. The 2024 budget predicts losing just 1,170 students per year through 2028. However, we averaged 1,600 over the last 5 years, even as charter, voucher, and even tuition grew. On top of that, our low birth rates mean that each upcoming cohort is 7% smaller than the 5-year-olds, creating a smaller student pie. So revise your prediction down. Low building capacity. If you plug in 2023 enrollment into the 2018 facilities plan, we're at about 73% capacity. The under-enrollment is in the center and northwest, which means that inefficiencies or closures affect them most. Wisconsin is foolish and does not fund facilities costs, unlike almost every other state, but we have not been serious about capacity since 2012 when we closed a few schools. Take it seriously. Operating budget deficit. The budget states that if we let staff compensation explode after this year, we'll have a bone-chilling negative $150 million a year, causing our cumulative debt to eclipse our entire annual budget by 2031. The work of this board over the next 2 years should be a rescue mission, not a blank canvas. Please do not build up personnel this year, even if you campaigned on such filigree. Capital budget opaqueness. In our board-approved ESSER 3 budget, as was stated, we allocated $126 million to construction, which is a lot towards something that typically doesn't improve student outcomes directly aside from HVAC. On our DPI-approved LEA plan, though, we allocate $168 million to construction. That's a 33% increase, which is far more than inflation explains. You should provide an ESSER 3 update that transparently explains that. I checked the website. It had spring and autumn 2022, not 2023. Absence is rising. As was said, the budget sets a 95% attendance goal. However, Black students' absences went from 6 weeks in 2019, still a lot, to 9 weeks in 2022. Black high schoolers missed 3 whole months of school. Kids cannot learn if they're not in class, invest in attendance with a realistic numeric goal. Lastly, academics falling. The budget aims for 5% increases in proficient and advanced and negative 10% decreases for minimal. However, Winter Star predicts that there's going to be no improvement in either this year, which grieves me a lot. According to NAEP, we're the lowest performing big school district in the country for Black students, 2 years behind Chicago, Jackson, New York, Memphis, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. There are 12 states in our country where special needs students read at or better than our Black students. The board's pandemic choices destroyed bright spots like Pratt, Excellence, and Barton. So instead of exhausting resources on proficiency, focus on eliminating the 72%.
Next, we have Luz Hernandez.
Good evening. Luz Hernandez, Hernandez, and I speak today as the MTEA treasurer. MTEA members demand fair processes for attendance and leaves so that all workers have fair and equitable treatment. In addition, MTEA members demand a fair and objective transfer and assignment process for all members, including social workers and building service helpers. This year alone, 75 food workers have been written up for missing work due to illness. MPS policy for food workers states that food service workers should not come to work if they are ill. This leaves MPS food workers in a gotcha policy that is punitive, not progressive, and differs from all other job classes in MPS. MTEA is looking to have these policies revisited and made equitable and fair before the 2023-24 school year begins. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ingrid Walker-Henry.
Good evening. Ingrid Walker-Henry, WALKER-HENRY. I come to you this evening as MTEA's Vice President. It is no secret that substantial progress needs to be made to improve our hiring process and speed. We can win for students by ensuring every excellent candidate is hired by MPS rather than getting held up in a pending status for several weeks, forcing well-qualified candidates to a neighboring district that quickly moves them through the hiring process. The MTEA remains in continuing discussions with administration regarding how MPS HR recruitment and hiring processes can be made more efficient to yield the qualified staff that our students deserve in schools right now, and how MPS communications with existing staff and new staff can be improved. We know that recruitment is nothing without retention, and we look forward to continuing discussions on how to improve retention within MPS. MTEA has reached an agreement with the MPS administration that an 8% cost of living adjustment with salary schedule, step, and lane movement and no benefit cuts, which is critical and a needed message that lets students and workers know that they are needed, valued, and prioritized in this budget. Thank you.
Next speaker is Amy Mizialko.
Amy Mizialko, Mizialko, President of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, Chair Gogol Gandhi, and Superintendent Posley. An 8% cost of living adjustment, salary schedule advancement, and no cuts to benefits for workers is foundational and fundamental to staff retention. But staff retention in all job classes is directly linked to principal, supervisor, and manager competency, prioritization of staff morale, and leadership abilities. MTA looks forward to engaging with MPS on the following in the budget: improving training for principals, supervisors, and managers on measures to improve staff morale. Revamp management training for principals, supervisors, and managers to be designed and discussed with all labor organizations. Design and conduct a joint employee rights training for principals, supervisors, and managers with labor organization representatives. Finally, in contrast to previous MPS administrations, this administration has stood up our student schools, which significantly minimizes the amount of staff accessing that happens in the fall due to third Friday counts. This practice brings stability in staffing to our students and MTEA encourages MPS administration and the board to continue this practice. Thank you.
That concludes our public testimony. At this time, we will move to board members' testimony. We will go in alphabetical order, and you can start with 2 questions, and then we will open up the floor for other questions. So we will start with Director Carr. Pass. Director Herndon. Director Jackson.
Questions, not as of yet, but more of a statement. Madam Chair, can I go backwards in dealing with the issue of the public speaking after the designated time?
Go ahead.
In doing so, I understand we're going down a rabbit hole. If we make this concession, well, it's already there. If we're going to do this, are we going to do it pick and choosing when it's applicable, if it's a personal attachment, or is it going to be a part of every board meeting that we allow those who are late and not following rules? But here as board members, we have to follow rules. Rules are set in place for a reason, and it works in my day-to-day life, so I don't understand why it's not working right here on the board.
Director Leonard.
Yeah, I have some questions for sure. So one thing that I have, and I have to really rethink myself here, but when you talk about the $13 million that was used from ESSER, was that to cover a deficit? You talked about, with compared to our operational budget, and you said $13 million were used from ESSER, or was it for ESSER? I'm a little bit confused on the way that was presented.
Administration.
Madam Chair, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. $13 million of funding that was used to staff art, music, and Phi-Ed in our school operations fund was put into ESSER. The funding wasn't put into, but the expenditures were into ESSER to cover those costs, which help balance our budget. Now, we can revisit that in the fall once we know the state funding, but at this point, that's what happened.
Director Leonard, any follow-up?
Now I follow up another question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. And on the remaining balances, I am not sure for ESSER, are we going to speak to that? I don't really think we got any details about the remaining balances. Are they earmarked already for something else, or what is the plan with that?
Administration.
Madam Chair, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The ESSER funding is detailed in a supplement to the budget that's attached to the board item, and it provides all the detail that you would want to see, and that has been given to the board in the past. We could revisit some of the slides. One thing I want people to understand is that ESSER, the slides that were shown were ESSER at the end of February and not at the end of the year, because we haven't come to the end of the year yet. So what we'll have left for ESSER is whatever we can carry over that is unspent this year, including encumbrances. Encumbrances can go over into the next year. So right now, we have the ESSER plan that's outlined, and if you look at the line item budget, you won't see some of the detail you would see in the other budgets, because we're waiting to see how this turns out and what our actual carryover is before we spread out those exact line items. So what you'd have to go by is that booklet that's attached to the board item. And I don't know, Shelley, do you have something to add?
Well, the only thing that I would add is just that we will be coming back to the board in the fall to discuss where we're at with the spending for ESSER 2 and talk about, how we've utilized that funding and provide that update.
Director Leonard, any follow-up?
That's good. That's fine. Thank you.
Any more? Oh, well, that's two questions. Okay. Director O'Halloran.
Thank you, Chair Gokul Gandhi. My question is around the vacancies. It's without having I know the number in totality, but I don't know how they're allocated or how we're planning at the school level or within central office, like at that actual level. So it makes it very hard to consider if the budget's right, if I should make an amendment. So my question is mainly around, I think it would not be feasible at this point to ask for that to be broken out, in the next 2 days so I can put together an amendment. But is it possible that going forward, maybe with the fall adjustment, that we can have a more realistic understanding of staffing levels? Because I think I don't see those allocated at the school level at this point, and maybe I'm missing it, but would it be possible to have that broken down in the future?
Administration.
Madam Chair, members of the board, yes, we can do just that, but I want you to know that's a fluid process. I have Adria Maddalini here with me. We just went over numbers today. They are constantly changing from cycle A, cycle B, and then we're getting ready to go into cycle C, so we can give those numbers that we are right now. We had basically, if my memory served me correctly, 348 vacancies for teachers as we speak. But I'm going to turn it over to Adria Maddalini to see that I get it correct.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, Adria Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. You are very close, Dr. Posley. We have 353 teacher vacancies as we move into Cycle B. We had Cycle A that we just completed. We're in the process of making offers to finish Cycle B for the teacher vacancies, and then Cycle B, Cycle C, which will be starting, will be focused on our classified employees. And for anyone who's listening, May 9th, we're going to be having a fair at School of Languages for anyone who's looking for a classified position, paras, CHAs, safeties, clerical, anything you name it, non-teaching. We're going to be having a fair out there and looking to recruit highly qualified people. I do want to note, while we have the 353 vacancies, that number, will go down. We start out substantially higher and we fill. And just so you're aware, we have 140 international teachers that are coming that will fill these slots as well. So I'm confident we're going to bring this number down, and we're working very hard in human resources to fill them as quickly as possible. And so we have every kid having a teacher on day one.
Director O'Halloran.
Thank you for that. My point isn't necessarily, I don't know how to convey it differently. If the budget is built with $70 million worth of vacancies, the understanding is that we're going to project $70 million of vacancies next year. Can we just budget differently so that it is more transparent? It is not, it almost puts, I feel like I'm in a position where to get to a balanced budget, I have to hope for $70 million of vacancies next year. And I don't want to hope for $70 million of vacancies next year. So it just makes it harder for me to say, yes, this budget is prioritized correctly, or no, it is not prioritized correctly, and here's how I would like to amend it, without having kind of that level of detail. So it's more of a question, a longer term question, not asking for any immediate action, but going forward. And I can put it into the parameters that we discussed in January that will only allow a certain tolerance or something, because it just feels like the vacancies get projected larger and larger every year. And I just, it's more a comment about my understanding, I guess.
Administration.
Madam Chair, members of the board, one of the things that our goal is to fill every position that we have. And also knowing that this proposed budget, we don't know exactly which dollars are we going to get from the state until the biennial is complete. And if we don't post these, if we don't get these positions out there and earmark these positions, we can't hire for them later. You know, we got to come back and get permission to go and to be able to post for the jobs. And so our goal is to try to get everything. We talked about 75 different opportunities out there. It's not for the like of not trying to get them. It's the idea that the supply and demand piece is not there. Yes, we could go ahead and cut all, any position that we feel that we won't be able to get. But our goal is to try to get them.
Director O'Halloran, any follow-up? Okay, any other questions? Great. Director Simpson.
Thank you. Yeah, so just the HR hiring process, I know that's come up in other conversations that we've had related to even nutrition services and getting our kitchen staff up to, full capacity. So I think not a budget question, but I think that we need to have a review of that at some point, have some updates on what we're doing to streamline that process, because it does hinder, it hinders us in many different ways across the district. My question is related to the early childhood positions listed under the referendum funding. So the FTEs that are there, are those all classroom teachers, or are there other positions that are included in part of that number?
Administration.
Madam Chair, Director Simpson, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Those are teacher FTEs.
That's all I wanted to know. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, if we're doing our two back-to-back, sure.
Oh, did I say one? Did I say two?
I don't know. Okay. So my second one, I guess, would be maybe related to the nutrition fund and what we're specifically doing with those dollars to address staffing needs and the quality and improving the quality of food. Are there things that we could highlight for the listening audience? I know it's been something we've talked about quite a bit. So are there some real specifics that you could talk about with those dollars that show those improvements?
Administration.
Madam Chair, Director Simpson, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Currently, we're working with the task force that's going to help us with an action plan for nutrition services, and we're very excited about that. Our last meeting was very successful, and we look forward to that partnership and hope that it continues. We are also, the team has really worked on the menus, and they, instead of having one person that's in charge of doing the menus, now they have a team of people that work on the menus so that they can get more input, including the chef that they have hired. And through that process, they have changed the menu to include more selections for students so that there's not just one thing that they can pick for their main entree for the meal. And we have Omer here that's probably going to talk about this much better than me. So.
Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the committee, Umar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. As Martha mentioned, and Director Simpson and Director Leonard, we had couple meetings with the Food Justice Task Force, one in March and one in April, and we are working with them to develop our goals for moving forward, how we can improve our nutrition program. In addition to that, our department is already working on a number of things. First of all, as Martha mentioned, we have a team now that is writing menus for next school year. And the team includes our recently hired chef, who is going out to a number of schools with new recipes. He's doing taste testing with the students. In fact, he was out at Hamilton High School today and tomorrow. So we are getting the students engaged in the process, getting their feedback, and also we have an RFP that is probably coming out to the board for contract approval this month for an equipment consultant. We are going to review each of our school kitchens, their current status of the equipment and what their needs are, and we are going to try to replace as many as we can, depending on the funds available. And then we are also going to develop a 5-year replacement plan to take care of all the equipment needs. So we are working really hard. And last thing I would say is at the end of last school year, we had 20 schools that we transitioned from pre-packed meals to a production kitchen. Currently, we have 30 schools that are fully transitioned to being a production kitchen. And we are anticipating at the start of next school year for early start schools in August, we will add 10 more schools, and then in September, 10 more schools. So we are hoping by September, start of school year, traditional schools, we'll have 50 schools transition to being a production kitchen. So we are working on those important areas in our program so far.
Director Simpson, any follow-up?
Yeah, so in terms of investments, would you say that the biggest investments that we're making in terms of improving, like the quality of the food that's presented to the students and staffing needs, would it be the production kitchens and the kitchen equipment? Is that sort of our biggest investment right now with this budget?
Yes, sorry.
Go ahead.
Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the committee, Director Simpson, this is Umar Abdullah, Director of Nutrition Services. Number one expense is obviously salaries and benefits for our staff. And then next biggest expense is our food cost, and eventually the equipment. However, equipment is not like every year expenditure for each site, but it's in aggregate. Each year we have to replace so many of the equipment. So salaries, benefits, food cost, and then comes equipment.
Director O'Halloran, any follow-up? Or, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
That is okay.
Director Simpson.
That's all right. No, that's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, those were two. That's right. Okay, moving on to Director Zambor.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, would the administration be able to talk about the enrollment student events that are in the budget? I noticed there's about $100,000 allocated for these events. And, I appreciate that the budget is being forthcoming about the projected enrollment declines. And I want to understand a little bit more about those events and if that amount listed is enough for us to actively increase our enrollment in this budget. And if we beefed that item up a bit more, what could it do to help our enrollment?
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, great question. One of the things that I will say, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Boswell and Nicole Amadeus as well, because they are working together on this particular piece. We have the high school enrollment fair, the kindergarten enrollment fair. We got a marketing plan that is in place, and when you drive the highways around the city, you will see a number of those advertisements as well as on the back of buses. around the city, and we, as well as billboards. We're doing all of those type of things to make sure. We're canvassing everywhere. Everywhere there's a place to canvass during the summer, we will be there. Every event, knocking on doors, locations that families go to for large congregations and those kinds of things, at public offices, stores. We have individuals that we have going out to those areas. We have a plan that we have pulled together, and I will turn it over to Nicole as well as Boswell to kind of walk us through any kind of things that I missed.
So, good afternoon, Director Goka Gandhi, members of the committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. As Dr. Posley mentioned, we have many categories in terms of our engagement for increasing student enrollment. He mentioned quite clearly the enrollment fairs, which are very grade-based and age-based. Of course, we have the kindergarten, we have the high school enrollment fair, as well as we have the early admissions enrollment fair. But what we have been doing new this year between the Department of Student Services and Communications is just making sure that we are very intentional and strategic about what schools we go after, what communities in which we go after, to put our advertising dollars, to put our canvassers, as Dr. Posley spoke about. So each year we have anywhere from 20 to 30 canvassers that target geological areas where schools-age children are. Like Dr. Posley mentioned, we also will be at every festival. Anything that's going on in the city, we will have individuals there. The communications department, which I will allow to speak in a while, has did a robust advertising campaign for this year for our kindergarten enrollment fair, which will bleed into next year as well. So we are working hand in hand. Those dollars have increased. We understand the importance of advertising our product to our community. We understand the importance of the availability for them to enroll. So we're definitely are focused on that area and being strategic to increase enrollment. Nicole.
Thank you. Members of the board. So the Department of Communications and Marketing is working to proactively address enrollment. I can only speak to what we've been doing since I've been here, which has been since September. But we've been working with student services to enhance our enrollment efforts. Like Mr. Boswell said, we, I think, did more than has been done in past years for a kindergarten enrollment marketing campaign that included creating an in-house commercial that we had television spots, Hulu ads, digital ads, social media boosts, newspaper ads, your traditional media, and then we also started looking at what more school districts are doing to get students. So one thing that's a little bit new is called inbound marketing, and that is knowing that families are looking beyond just the school district and they're looking at specific schools. So we started seeing what we can do for specific school websites. That's a project that's going to, it's ongoing, it's going to be ongoing for quite a while, but we're looking at how can we not just be projecting a large district-wide campaign, but how can we speak to parents where we know that they're looking. In terms of just budget, like I said, we did a campaign for the 22-23 school year, and right now we are working on an annual buy so that we can have advertising that runs from hopefully July of this year, it might be August, we're still finalizing the orders, through June of next year. So I'm not aware of a campaign like that happening in recent years. So if it has, forgive me, but now that's going to be for the total year. So we'll be able to advertise not just for enrollment, but throughout the year for different things. But of course, a large target on that would be enrollment. We're also using our ESSER dollars to invest in our ability to enhance our communication. So we're upgrading our video equipment so we can do more in-house video. Right now, my team is working really hard to get video of as many programs as we can before the end of the school year. And then we've also contracted, or we're in the process of attempting to contract for some video services to update our video library so that we can have more videos and increase communication. I think that's a good overview, but if there's any additional questions, please let me know.
Wow, that was very robust. Okay, Director Zambor, any follow-up?
Chair Gokul Gandhi, if the administration could just kind of clarify, so what I'm hearing is that there's overlap between the communications and student services, and so some of the money does fall under marketing, not necessarily those student enrollment events.
Correct. So part of our marketing strategy is enrollment, because we recognize that enrollment is a significant, it's one of the most important things that we should be focusing on in terms of communications.
Any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, great. Let's do an open call for questions. Are there any questions that the committee members might have?
Yes, I do. So for the vacancy rate, 352, is there a breakdown to show, because that's a vague number, is there a breakdown to show per district a percentage of teachers from each?
Administration?
Madam Chair and members of the board, yes, there's a breakdown. We have a breakdown by every single school of any vacant position that's in that particular school. And we could provide copies if need be. And that's a fluid process. It's constantly changing. I see Adria Maddalini headed to the mic, and she will probably be talking off of that particular list. So we have that list broke down by teachers, paras, every single job class that we have within the district, and we can kind of tell you exactly what's available. Adria.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, Adria Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, we do have a breakdown where we track by school how many vacancies for teachers, paras, CHAs. So we're happy to give that information to you if there's specifics regarding a specific job class. And I know I've also worked closely with Accountability and Efficiency on working on some vacancy rate data by school board district and look by school and district, so we're happy to provide that information.
Director Jackson, any follow-up?
Yeah, just one more question too. So in the vendor services, I noticed, and it's once again new, just looking through it, there's a lot of vendor service that mirrors the certain departments that already provide certain services. So for instance, the Black, Latino, Male Achievement, how do we, and student services could actually use them too as ambassadors. So if we're talking about representation, what better representation is that, and talking to certain districts and schools to show positive representation of what it looked like, and how can we do more with the Black, Latino, Male Achievement department. Once again, the district is largely minority-based, so it's only right, in my opinion, to utilize them more, especially in the funded department as well. And if you've had any thoughts in using them, because I know they have youth ambassadors too. So how can they be utilized with the communications, with the marketing plan as well?
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the board, perfect information. That is something that we're doing. We're trying to use every single department we have within the district to push enrollment, to encourage individuals anywhere that we are. We are recruiting for the district, talking about the incentives that we offer for jobs and all of those wonderful things that we have put in place that the board has approved for, recruiting individuals to come to the district. But yes, our Black and Latino male office, they're working at, they have some elementary schools that they're in as well. That's also a recruitment base to the high schools. We want to make sure that's one of the reasons we got our high school enrollment fair, so that we can encourage individuals to come. And also, we have had everyone at the table with any idea that they may have, that is something that I will follow up with this evening after talking with, I have Paulette Chambers here that I'll yield to have some comments about that. Paulette?
Director Jackson, Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee. Our Black and Latino Male Department is currently doing their male mentoring program. They also have their buddies program, and they have their, forgive me, I'm going to say this wrong, but they have their manhood program that they are also working on. With that, I recently became chief of that department just a few months ago, and so some of the things that we are working on is combining all of the departments, not combining, but working with all of the departments that work under the chief of staff so that we are combining the resources that each department has so that they can work with multiple schools and devising our plan for FY24 so that we are collective in what we do and not working in that silo. So we are looking at how we're going to be able to service the schools more efficiently and bring in some of those programs. One of the things that they are looking at is having more parent meetings and involvement. And so they are currently working on their agenda on what that is going to look like so that we are not repeating information that parents are getting at schools, but actually coming in with information that's pertinent to the Black and Latino male department.
Director Jackson, any follow-up?
No.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Chasen.
Thank you, Chair Gokul Gandhi, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. The budget notes that rather than having sort of a staggered per pupil allocation at the school level, they've all been leveled off to roughly $4,400. I know the budget includes the 8% COLA, and I'm wondering if that per pupil allocation lift includes that 8%, or if that 8% is then allocated to the schools on top of that lift.
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Matt Chasen, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The per pupil was increased, but they were also, the schools also received $27 million to help with the raises. So I believe that it was probably a dual. I don't believe the $27 million covered all the raises, but it helped with the raises at the schools, and so part of that probably did come from their increase per pupil.
Mr. Chasen?
Just one more additional question. This is the first time that the board gets to see the accumulation of the funding that's put into the construction trust fund, and that balance is now over $96 million. The forecast for the construction fund in the budget alludes to like an $18 million spend in out years to basically reduce that $96 million balance over the next several years, but I wasn't sure if there's a specific plan that was associated with that set aside, or if there's anything the administration could share related to what it sees as the purpose for those dollars.
Administration?
Madam Chair and members of the board, Sean Kane is going to be walking out very briefly to kind of talk through that particular piece. So I am on the mic until Sean gets here. And he's moving swiftly to make sure that that takes place. Sean Kane?
Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. We do have, I'd say, an array of deferred maintenance that we'd be able to address with projects that we're able to work with through deferred maintenance. And right now, we're currently projecting about $309 million. And those type of projects include roofing projects, boilers, and right now, currently this year, that we normally work with, we have $3 million to work related to fire escapes, smoke vents, typical things that we have for like fire alarm testing and whatnot. So those are the type of things that we just have a bare minimum of. Like I said, we do have roofing projects, parking lot reconstructions, window projects, boiler replacements, testing and balancing. A lot of those type of projects that would definitely fall within that area of trying to work with those funds.
Mr. Chasen? Any other questions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, what is the next item?
Madam Chair, that was the only item on tonight's agenda.
Okay, well, actually, one reminder, there are a few more opportunities for individuals to testify on the budget, so please don't miss those opportunities if you weren't able to tonight. And remember to register and come before 5:30 so that you can have an opportunity to speak. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.